Hello and welcome to the DPC show. My name is Dan Offen, aka Mr. Big Jams. In this show, I'm going to be taking you through all 6 of the DPC regions with our final bit of analysis and giving you a little bit of preview of the major. I'm aided by 5 of the world's top analysts. Kips couldn't make it this week, so I'll be covering China myself. There's a number of notification pings throughout the show, so I'm sorry about that. I was doing a lot through the workday and found it difficult to close Slack and so on and so forth. So you're not getting emails. I am. Don't worry about it. Sorry about the slightly late release of this episode. Everyone's been quite busy, so I've been putting it together. I'm going to be kicking off very shortly, but before then, if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, I can be found at Daniel Offen. And if you'd like to financially support me for creating the show, you can find links to my Patreon in the episode description. And we're going to be kicking off straight away with Peksu, who's going to be taking us through Western Europe. Okay, so just to kick off, talk me through, I guess, the highlights for what was a pretty big last week for the Western Europe DPC.
Yeah, obviously that was didn't end up being such a tiebreaker. What I was expecting maybe a little bit from if OG would have won, but there was still a lot of I would say kind of expected results. Maybe Nigma losing to Tundra was my biggest upset, but outside of that, other series, I think they were somewhat expected. I think Secret won against Brain, which was kind of expected. Liquid against OG, I do definitely think the Liquid looks stronger than OG. The whole this DPC, I think OG has not been looking so great, and they were still able to at least stay in the upper division, so that's the good thing for them. But obviously, not going to the major, it's definitely a disappointment for them. But other than that, I think Secret kind of showing how good they are still. It was still against Brame, and Brame did pretty well overall in the season. But Secret kind of pulling off, and maybe even that last big brood in that last game was very, very Secret maybe getting a little bit they're kind of understanding this patch better. I think by the weeks go. So I think from the start they were still figuring out like everyone else, but I think they have been from the top teams. Maybe they haven't been so onto the patch yet, so I think they're slowly getting understanding what they feel strong about and what they like to play and stuff like that. So yeah, I think Secret looking pretty good again, and it's gonna be an interesting wildcard stage on
Certainly, yeah.
major.
Hopefully they can put it through there. I want to talk first about Team OG. I think they've been obviously the big story this week. We don't have to go into and I don't want really to go into the drama at all. But let's talk a little bit about what's gone wrong for them this DPC. A loss against Liquid was not that unexpected, but maybe we might have expected them to put up a slightly bigger fight, and then falling in the tiebreakers. Not that it mattered too much for them against Tundra again was a surprise. What do you think happened in this last week? Is it systematic of what happened across the whole of the DPC for them?
I just think they have not really clicked in a way. I don't think Anna has been that kind of guy that has not really been the savior for that team. Like I think people were expecting that Anna is gonna come back and he's gonna do all these things, gonna win them or like he's just gonna make them qualify for a major because he is a really good player. He was like one of the best players in the world some years ago, but obviously if you don't play that much, it doesn't just like you just don't. There's so many people who just play all the time. If Anna takes these breaks, I don't definitely think that Anna was on like top form at all in this like what we have expected from Anna. I think he was far away from that level. I don't think he's very as aggressive as a carry that some other players are. I don't think he's that flashy right now. I'm not like trying to bash on him, but I just like it just shows that he hasn't been playing as much compared to other players who play pretty much all the time. It's a hard game if you don't play. But yeah, I think that's like one thing. I think outside of that, OG, they weren't really looking that good. And in general, I think they had some ideas with their drafts, which they have some cool ideas with how they draft some tops on heroes, for example. I think he had some nice heroes and some like pocket strats or whatever you call them. But their overall gameplay has not really been on top. I think they have been struggling to find the way that they want to play this patch and some decision making after lanes. They do decently sometimes on their lanes, but after that it doesn't really doesn't really feel like something is clicking for them right now. They're not like hard to say exactly what is the like biggest reason for that, but I think there's like many factors that like add up, and then it becomes like a bigger thing that makes it a worse thing. So I think just there's like a lot of these things that doesn't just click for them right now, and it's also just like the level of EU teams. There are just a lot of good teams, and competition is really hard. So you have to really have to play well and have good idea of the rest, and all these things they matter so much. So Alliance Liquid being the first and second seed on EU just shows how tough the EU competition is right now. In terms of like qualifying for the major, even if you have 4 slots. That's kind of how I feel about OG. I think they will still. I think they still have a good shot at tier qualifiers, but they still have to obviously work hard for that because there's gonna be still good teams there as well. But now they're gonna have some time to think and try to refresh and like forget about this qualifier and just move on for the tier qualifiers. Yeah, I think they have some stuff to work on still. I'm not sure exactly what is their solution. They will have to focus on that themselves. But yeah, I think there's some things that are not really clicking for them right.
Certainly been seen then. Let's talk about Team Tundra, because we've not, or Tundra Esports as they are actually known. We've not really spoken about them at all this series. They've always kind of been the middle team, and I guess that's where they've ended up. We might have expected them to perhaps be relegated, but they had a really strong last week with a win over Enigma and that win over OG and Brain to solidify
Yeah.
their non-relegation. Talk to me about what happened in the Enigma series, first of all.
I think against Nigma, it was a close series overall. They went to game 3. I think they had this Venomizer, which ended up working this time in the 3rd game. So now we finally saw winning with it. Overall, Tundra has been this team that has been running a little bit of this unorthodox offlaner, like position 4, Heroes on Snaking. They have been playing Enigma jungle. They've been playing Venomizer jungle, so on. So they have been like playing a bit differently. Maybe the other teams other teams don't really seem to do that much. Outside of that, I think Tundra has been. I think they were one of the first teams that started playing AA in EU region, especially, noticing how strong this hero is. They utilize that. They have some good team fights in against Enigma, and even though Enigma lost that series, it was still a close series, and Enigma could have definitely won the 3rd game as well. But yeah, I think Tundra is playing like they have these nice ideas with their draft. They have good lanes, good team fight, good ways of taking Roshan's and objectives. So just kind of worked well for them. And I think Tundra has been playing pretty good as well this season. They had a lot of series which went to game 3s, and they lost those series. So definitely, it's not like feels a bit bad for them in that way that they had really close series and they have been taking games. So yeah, I mean the last week was good for them. They beat OG with a stand-in. Anna wasn't there, but still they definitely looked better team. Snigma as well, they were looking good. So I think Tundra for sure, at least if they keep playing like this, they will have a really good chance at the EU qualifiers to do well there, because I definitely think that like they took a game of Secret, they took OG win, they took a game against Alliance. So there's a lot of these series just went to game 3. So they're playing well, but it's just like I said, I guess the EU competition is just so rough. So
Yeah.
you just have to if you don't win those series, they just feel really bad because you're gonna miss a chance to get a tiebreaker or whatever. So but Tundra still, I would say they definitely are above OG right now. I think OG has to like there's still like some more to learn from this than Tundra, even though Tundra didn't even either qualify, but they're still playing kind of well in my book. So
Certainly.
that's how I feel.
I want to go into one final thing, which was game 2 of Secret Brame. We saw a Tinker there, which I think we've not previously seen in the EU upper division, at least. Let me double check that before I confidently spout something. Yes, I think that's the first Tinker in the upper division. Talk me through that game a little bit and what the Tinker. Obviously, it lost, but do you think Brame could have won that second game and held their own a little bit more?
Well, it was a really good Tinker pick until the Broodmother pick comes, which is basically one of the better heroes against Tinker for many reasons. You lane against him pretty well. Well, nowadays maybe not so much but still like in the game, Brood Mother really feels good against Tinker. You can just find the hero. But yeah, I know that Wish is a Tinker spammer. He has been playing it a lot, one of his most comfortable heroes. For the 4 heroes besides the Brood, it's a very good Tinker game because they don't have that much catch for him. And he plays really fast, so yeah, I think it was a good Tinker pick, but it was just a better Brood pick, I think, from Secret. That's how I feel about it. It's like that's the problem of having a last pick. I would say that if you don't have this, you have to be careful with it. Because Tinker is kind of that hero that you wanna pick it last. But it did. I like in the game you can see he still did a lot of work. He had a good score. He had a good farm. He had good damage, but it ended up going to this really late stage of the game where all of them kind of started being really farmed. So yeah, I wouldn't say it was a bad thing game, but they weren't just they tried to ban the heroes that were good against the Clockwork and Nukes, but then there was the Broodmother. So it's just a hard thing when you don't last pick these heroes. I feel like you are acceptable of getting counterpicked somewhat. So that's what happened in that game. But still good performance in that game, I would say, from the Tinker. And I'm expecting to see this hero more on Major for sure.
Certainly. Okay. That's good to hear. I think we can leave it there. That's thanks so much for covering this across the whole season. I want to have a brief touch on the lower division with Viking GG going up. Did you manage to watch many of their games? Do you think they're going to take the next? Because they'll be in the TI qualifiers. Is there a chance for them, or is it very much Secret and OG's ballpark?
I think Viking chance in, or like they obviously I don't think any team going to especially to the upper division in that TI qualifier is not gonna be like some underdogs. I think they are gonna have a good chance. I think they have been long time the same team kind of together, even though they changed Kesu or like they changed Toby to Kesu. But outside of that, the roster has been very very similar or like same. So I think they have a good potential of taking some games from good teams. But will it be enough? Because there's gonna be still, I think I would expect there's gonna be somewhat a lot of series there, so they have to keep it up. But yeah, I wouldn't count Viking out at all. I think they were very dominant on the lower division. Even level up was pretty solid on the lower division. But Viking, obviously the best team there, not losing a series. They are better team than these teams. So from the upper division, they're gonna have some good opponents, and they will have to show it's gonna be only one slot. So it's gonna be a hard qualifier, but definitely I think they're a team to look for as well in the qualifiers. I wouldn't say that they don't have a chance or anything like that. It's always a chance to qualify, and I think if they work hard and do their things, who knows what happens.
Great. Okay, good to hear. Lots to look forward to then for the major and the qualifiers. But thanks so much for joining me across this whole series, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks.
Huge thanks to Peksu for taking us through Western Europe. Peksu has been fantastic this whole season, and I'm sure you're all very grateful to him for his analysis. He can be followed on Twitter at PeksuDota. We're going to be moving on straight away to Mo Farah, who is going to be taking us through Eastern Europe. Okay, so just to kick off, I guess talk me through a little bit about your highlights of the last week of the Eastern European DPC.
Highlights? There's only 3 games, Dan.
Yes.
There's only a certain amount of highlights I can give you. Obviously, the first one that came that we should mention quickly before we move on is that's Team Spirit beating Extremum. The series didn't mean anything for either team. They were both nailed on for 2nd and 8th, so it was whatever. Extremum lost 2-0. Team Spirit finished the season 6-1, which is a big improvement from last year.
Yeah.
I think, did they go 3-4 last year? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So
last year,
really last
well.
last DPC season. So really well done by them. Thoroughly well deserved. And I'm really excited to see how they do at the major, because obviously even since they've been as Yellow Submarine and things, there's been a big hype about this team, but this is the first like big event for them. It feels like in terms of a LAN, right? So lots to look forward to.
Let's talk through Team Spirit a little bit in more detail then. What do you think has been the biggest change in the way they've played this season versus the last?
I mean, the biggest change is them obviously playing with Miroslav for the whole season. And the other one that I know that a lot of the analysts have been mentioning on stream and stuff is that Toronto Tokyo has been playing much better this year. I think he was very inconsistent last season. You know, maybe that comes off the back of them maybe having roster issues, whatever, or having problems that they need to deal with. But this season they've looked really strong. I think Yaturo's looked really good as well. They seem to have a good understanding of their hero pool. Like this Mirana as well is something that they really enjoy. I know Mira and Toronto Tokyo can both play it really well. So I personally got big hopes for them, especially with how close they were with beating VP as well. Obviously,
Yeah, very close.
VP are kind of well respected in the scene, but if Spirit are getting that close to them, then there's only good things to look forward to.
Yeah, certainly. I want to talk a bit more about Miroslav as a player. This is his first proper professional team. He was in a team called Cascade, which
Yes.
I don't know if I've ever heard of them. For a number of years, and from 2019 to 2021, and now he's in Team Spirit. So he might not be a player that anyone really knows. What do you think he's doing particularly well for this team?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because, like you say, when these players come from teams that nobody's ever really heard of, I know who Cascade are, but they play in like all these online tournaments and stuff and try and qualify for things. They never really get there. Not a bad team at all, but it's always really interesting when these big teams pick them up to see what they can do, right? I mean, his Mirana, I think, is particularly impressive, which is I know it's something I've already mentioned. They seem to play really well around it as a team as well. You know, people talk about the arrow and things in the laning stage being like having these really good setups and things with like spear or gush and into the arrow and things or whatever. But it's the ability to, I think, utilize the Moonlight Shadow is really important. And the way that Team Spirit play it is that they'll pick these big team fight heroes as well. Like they love their Tides, they love their Mars. What else is there? I can't think. Maybe like Centaurs or whatever, right? But the ability to have Moonlight Shadow to allow you to get the right initiations into fights, and find the right pickoffs and things, I think is really important. And they've, like I said, they've played around it really well. So obviously, I think when they play at the major, I'd be surprised if they get Mirana as much. I think this, if I was preparing for them myself, I think it's something I would look for to potentially first phase ban, just because of how strong they play it in multiple positions. I think, yeah, it'd be cool to see.
Excellent. Well, lots to look forward to there from such a young, exciting team. I want to go into ASA Monaco Gambit, who squeaked into a qualification spot in the I mean, not really it's into the wild card, which is effectively a qualifier, with a 2-0 victory over Unique, which I think we were talking about quite a lot last week as a big game. Unique were perhaps expected to challenge them more than they did in that 2-0. I didn't get to watch that. Do you have any comments on it as a match?
I thought Unique would play a little bit better than they did, especially after beating Navi the week before. They didn't play badly necessarily, but I think ASA Monaco Gambit weren't particularly clean at all points in the game. They played this like Deucer in game 1 with a Storm, and there was like a couple of... The Deucer was really difficult to kill, but I think... who's the mid player for Unique? FN, isn't it? Had a really rough game 1 in particular, and kind of like used all his mana on the Storm to like commit to fights, and then was kind of stuck in this really weird position all the time. And it felt like they just ran out of damage at a certain point, and Dream was playing Arc Warden for Gambit, and he kind of... It's a decent core-to-core matchup against the Deucer anyway, but he kind of ran away for it, going for this really greedy, like, obviously, Meoshan, Midas, bots build. So no matter how far the Deucer is, the Arc Warden is always going to farm faster. I want to mention quickly, though, you talk about it being a qualifier, this wildcard. It's just a casual qualifier with Nigma, Secret, Vici, IG, Execration, and Gambit, and only 2 of them can go through to the group stage at the major.
It's a rough old qualifier.
Like, obviously, IG won the last major. Vici did really well at the last major. Secret did really well at the last major. Nigma are going to have their full roster this time, fingers crossed. And Execration aren't a slouch of a team either. So, I think Execration and AS Monaco Gambit really have it up against them in that wild card. Because
either way, you're gonna get 2 big teams missing out from that wild card.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have 4 teams missing out from the wild, like big teams missing out from the wild card. But I know what you mean.
So, yeah. 2 medium teams missing out.
It's crazy, isn't it? So I feel for AS Monaco Gambit, and I also think they'll be in a bit of a shock that they've managed to get there after losing their first 3 series against the other big teams. We've talked about this a lot. So I'd be surprised if they, after those 3 games at the start of the season, they hadn't thought about what they wanted to do in the future disregarding the major because they didn't think they were going to get there. They would have probably been thinking like, okay, do we want to carry on playing together? Do we need to make any changes before the TI qualifiers? All of a sudden it rocks up and they're like, oh, we've qualified for the wildcards. This is really awkward, so I'd be interested to see how they take it from here.
I want to talk a little bit about the final series of Na'Vi versus PuckChamp. Are there any insights that you gleaned from that one?
I didn't get to watch these games, which is a real disappointment because I went away. But after how Na'Vi played against Unique last week and looking at what people have said about this series as well, I don't think Na'Vi have anyone to blame except themselves. And the absolute highlight of this series for me was General tweeting a question mark after obviously he, of course, getting kicked and there was all that drama before the season started and General not having a team, to him being like, yeah, well, I'm not the problem, am I? So Na'Vi have no one to blame except themselves. They were in a really good position.
Very much so.
They were in a really good position. They'd only lost to Spirit and VP. If they won the rest of their games, they would have been fine. All of a sudden, the last couple of weeks, they lose to Unique and PuckChamp, which was a massive series for them, by the way, because they avoided relegation by winning that series. So it's not like PuckChamp weren't playing for anything. They had it all on the line as well. So game 2 in particular, I managed to go back and watch a little bit because PuckChamp picked techies, and I find that here really interesting with how different teams utilize it. And it was funny to see that PuckChamp are like one of the only teams that have really picked techies throughout the whole of the DPC across like all regions. They play it really well, and Na'Vi they looked like they were just so ready to just give up after about 20 minutes in that game 2. I think they GG'd out at like minute 28 or something.
Well, Roger,
so I can't.
Back in Roger's weird item watch, he did buy a Midas on his Enchantress as well. So,
well, I think Roger's got some like, you get like the Michelin books of things that you need to tick off the things that you've seen. I don't know if they still do them anymore. I remember them being around as when I was a kid. I think he has them for like items to build on Ench, and he has to like go through the whole list. But I mean, Midas Ench isn't necessarily bad if they thought the game was going to go late or whatever. Then fair enough. I mean,
didn't.
No, it definitely didn't. But again, really big for PuckChamp because they started this season really poorly as well. Before last week, they'd won, I think it was one series. Who was the first team they beat? I think they beat Extremum relatively early on. But then after that, I mean, they beat Windstrike last week and they beat Na'Vi this week in their last 2 series to make sure they could stay up. So, I mean, big congratulations to them. And it's the same in Pinnacle Cup, which is the other tournament they've been playing in. I think they went like, was it 0-4 or something? And they've come back and I think they're 4-5 or something now. So it's not just in the DPC that their comeback has occurred. Obviously something has changed within that team and they found themselves a little bit more. And they've done really well. So looking forward to seeing how they progress because, again, that's a really young team too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, very exciting. I want to have a brief word on lower division, which was won by Hellraisers somewhat comfortably. But this week, Hellraisers did lose to Empire, who then squeaked as a result of that into the second position. Did you manage to catch that series? Was there anything to learn from it?
From the Hellraiser series, Kuman wasn't playing against Empire. So I didn't get to watch the series, but I imagine that had a big effect because Kuman is a very, very strong player within that team. I'm not saying he's the only good player. Obviously, they have like Youngji, Rezo, Zayats, and Lil, but I think at any time having a stand-in is really going to hurt. So Bait beating Trident is obviously massive as well, allows them to stay up in the lower division, which is fantastic. But
always good to see.
It was cool because Empire won their last 2 series against HR and Trident, and then they also won the tiebreaker with Fantastic Five to make sure they secured promotion to the upper division. So I thought Empire were in season 1 when they played in upper division. They didn't look that fantastic. I kind of had them down as a dark horse a little bit, and they didn't really live up to that. They were quite poor, so they'll be looking forward to giving it another go, and they'll be very confident that they can stay up this time around, I'd imagine.
Great. Okay, we'll leave it there then. Thanks so much for joining me across this season, and I will speak to you soon.
Thanks.
Huge thanks to Mo Farah for taking us through Eastern Europe. Always much appreciated. Fantastic analyst and a very good guy. We, however, are moving on straight away to Southeast Asia, where Danog is going to be taking us through proceedings there. Okay, so just to kick off, I guess talk me through, it's a big old last week with tiebreakers and final games, but talk me through what you see as the highlights of that last week.
I mean, the surprising things for me is, the final placements going into that last week. There was the final series of week 5, which was Omega Esports going up against Boom. And if Boom won that, then it would have potentially been a 5-way tie for second and third place, I believe. So then leading into this last week, you had teams like Execration who were in with a really good shot of making it through. And then there was, of course, the Fnatic and TNC series, and then Neon versus T1 to see, who's going to actually go to the major, who isn't. And for the Southeast Asian scene in particular, it is really important because there is a legitimate possibility that there is going to be 0 Southeast Asian teams in that top 12 going through to TI. So potentially the only Southeast Asian representation will come from that guaranteed 1 qualifier spot. But I'm crossing my fingers, T1. They just need to get they need to win 1 series in the playoffs, which they're already qualified for. So whether that's upper bracket or lower bracket, I'm pretty sure that's all they should need. So we'll see, and it's a bit of a harder road for both Execration as well as TNC.
So to go into the Knoxville section of the show, he's going to loom large, I think, over this week's DPC show. There is a 73.78, so 74% if we're not being dicks, percent chance of T1 qualifying for TI. So it looks pretty likely.
We'll see.
I don't think coming out of the end of the first DPC where T1 didn't do fantastically, we might have expected them being the biggest of the Southeast Asian teams. But talk me through, I guess, T1's last week and how you think they've done across the whole DPC.
Well, really, it was a similar sort of case to how their campaign began again from season 1. They started out in the first week losing to Omega Esports, and that's never an ideal way to go about it. But ever since then, they've won every single series that they've played. The only exception being going up against Boom, I believe. They actually ended up losing to Boom in a 2-1 series. But since then, it's just been win, 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 win. It feels to me like the support duo of Zephyr and Whitemon have really, not that they haven't had time to gel together, but just on this patch, this meta, perhaps, they're working a lot better together. And then you've also had the time for 23 Savage and his game play and his game style to really become integrated further into the team because, when they initially were playing with him, that was after they had qualified for the wild card of the Singapore Major. And that was without Cuckoo as well. So they obviously had quite a poor showing at the Singapore Major because they didn't have their captain, they didn't have their drafter, and they just had someone new to their roster. But now they've gone through the entire season. They're looking a lot stronger. And I don't want to say it's like Neon coming out of season 1 because from them, I legitimately thought like these guys are a shot to win the major because they have this unique style that was just faster than everyone else, that was different to everyone else throughout the world. With T1, there's small elements of that. Cuckoo likes to draft a few unorthodox things, but I'll be honest, none of these Southeast Asian teams, when I look at the We Play Animajor coming up, are like, wow, these guys could really take it to some of the best teams in the world.
So talk me through that final game against OB Neon first, and then we'll go into the first price tiebreaker against TNC next. OB Neon have been, I guess, a little bit of a disappointment for many people this DPC series, coming in 5th place after such a bright showing at the major. Talk to me about their final stumble there at the last block to T1.
I mean, for mine, Neon, their biggest issue for me, and it happened somewhat in the draft here, but also during the tiebreakers, is that they're trying to be a little too clever. Back in the day, they were, making POS 5 Void, POS 5 Troll Warlord, these crazy styles with Nature's Prophet at the major work. Prophet didn't even receive that many major nerfs, but they still just stopped picking him for whatever reason. And it was kind of the similar sort of thing this series. They went with the mid Sand King and ended up working out well for them because it was against a Broodmother, but then they just seemed like T1 were outdrafting them every step of the way. And it's a little bit unfortunate because then you have someone like Yopaj on heroes like the Death Prophet and the Gyrocopter, which, is very competent on those heroes, but it's not the same, crazy style as, let's say, a Spirit hero or an Invoker or, things that are a little bit flashier than some of these, rally around me style of heroes. And it just feels like it doesn't fit their identity all that well.
I want to go briefly into 23 Savage as a player. In both all those games, he's on I guess, relatively standard carries, but was he a key force in them, or is it a case of the whole team beginning to play together more effectively?
I think the thing with Savage, I mean, I've always said with Savage, he's one of those people, obviously he's extremely high MMR. To get to that point, you need to be able to, like, 1v5 games occasionally, and he still does that at the competitive level. Having said that, in the second game when he was playing the Faceless Void, there were many missed Chronospheres, there were many times where the rest of his team did bail him out of the scenario. So previously where, like, if he didn't land those Chronos, T1 lost. Now the rest of his team are, I don't want to say picking up the slack because they're not a bad team at all, but they're compensating for any, like, small mistakes that might be happening. But it definitely wasn't entirely the 23 Savage show. I have to give credit to Carl as well. He's really stepped his game up too in the mid lane.
Great to hear. Let's move on then to talk about the TNC versus Fnatic game that closed up week 6 before that. Fnatic, I want to talk a little bit about Fnatic first. They've obviously been a massive disappointment this DPC season, losing then to TNC, then losing off their tiebreaker to Execration. What ended up happening in this series? Is it more of the same from them?
A little bit more of the same, but I feel like, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but Moon, he just drops the ball many a time. You know, in that second series, in the second game of that series, when Fnatic were 1-0 up, they actually had a pretty good start to the game, and Moon had an amazing time where he actually stole Aegis rather from Roche, which was amazing. But since then, it was just another case of chain feeding over and over again. And, you know, it's the Twitch chat was out in full force for sure when they were calling Moon Mr. CEO, because it feels like no matter what he does, no matter what his performance is like, everyone else seems to drop like flies around him, but Moon just keeps on persisting in that mid lane role. So I don't know. I feel like TNC, they've been performing quite well. I really want to shout out Boomy as well. I feel like he's been a really solid addition to TNC in that position 5 role. He's been biding his time, but now he's grabbed it with both hands, this opportunity, and I'm keen to see how he performs at the major as well.
And they went into that final first place, second place tiebreaker, kind of equal top of the region, them and T1. Were you expecting T1 to win that? Was it a surprise when TNC took it?
I was surprised that T1 won the series, because I feel like TNC had probably been the most consistent throughout the entire series, and it was just another case of, well, with the exception of their loss to Lilgun, of course. Yes. But I don't know, with T1, they're very, like, their range of performances can go from, like, just good to excellent. And this was just one of those series where it did happen to be excellent, but, I mean, part of that was, of course, due to gameplay, but TNC just let them have the same 3 heroes 2 drafts in a row. And basically the exact same result happened. If anything, T1 fine-tuned it even further to be able to take the second game in even more convincing fashion. Like, they'll first phase a Snapfire every single time because clearly they think that it works for them. And, I mean, they're right. It has been so far.
Do you think that's the style that we'll see T1 take to the major, that Snapfire first pick, the heavy, big old clunky core, and a bit of a boost for that core?
I think it could, and it's kind of similar to the style that I think Execration are going to take to the major as well. Like, they love playing the Doom, and I feel like Doom, they've changed him around a little bit so that the priorities are somewhat different. You know, you don't get a regen from the Devour anymore and that sort of stuff. But with the heroes that are back in the meta now, that Doom ability just becomes so much more powerful, even without the break. You know, you get that onto a Medusa, you get that onto a Juggernaut, you get that onto a Phantom Lancer, Faceless Void, these heroes that are strongly in the meta right now, even the PA, you know, and that is a one team fight really, really easily. So I'm very happy for Execration that they were able to get through. Not so much because it did cost Fnatic like some more DPC points, which might have been good for Southeast Asia's chances, but the boys, they've surprised for sure, the Execration fellows.
What do you think's changed for them this season versus the last? Because last season they were almost relegated. What do you think their hype built up more effectively this time than last?
Probably just so they got Palos from I believe it was Vice, and then they've put Yoe from the position 1 role into the mid lane. And I feel like even when he was playing the pos 1 role, it was kind of like when mid 1 was playing for OG. You know, he plays these hyper aggressive divey style of heroes, and Yoe was playing a very similar gameplay. But if you play it from mid lane, that actually works a lot more because your role is to create space. Your role is to be that person diving in and making flashy plays and taking a lot of the attention away from your position 1. So I feel like that just fits their niche a little bit better. And you know, he's incredibly young. I think he's only 17 years old, so he's still got a lot of room to grow.
Let's finally close up by talking about Boom Esports, who got relegated through the 5th, 7th place tiebreakers. They had I thought a pretty good season last season. I remember watching them quite a bit. They obviously didn't make it to the major, but I think they were somewhat impressive throughout. Do you think it's a fair result, them being relegated?
I would say it's fair based off of their performances. You know, I obviously didn't want it to happen because they're a group that have stuck together for a long time. You know, I like to see stability rewarded, but you know, it was just a case where you had some hungrier teams, I suppose. You know, you've got Omega Esports, who ended up beating them in both of the. There was a reset, right, because they went 1-1-1 in the first round of those best of one tiebreakers. But you know, Omega, even though they've had to change around their roster a little bit because Boomy and Bok got taken by TNC, they brought in CML and Shanks. They were still able to make it work, and you know, their more aggressive playstyle kind of caught Boom off guard. Going into this season, if you said, you know, this team with Dreamercell playing again instead of Drew, it's actually going to fare far worse, at least results-wise, compared to what the Season 1 was, I would have said you're crazy. But for mine, it was a case of, well, in Season 1, Makoto, it felt like he was the only one carrying Boom. It was heavily on his shoulders. There was some definite cameos from FBZ as well, but he relatively underperformed this season. So Makoto, even though he's quite mechanically skilled, his decision-making at times was questionable at best.
Great. Okay, I think we can leave it there then. So much to look forward to from SEA when it comes to the major. Hopefully we can see T1 make it into TI. That'd be very exciting. But thanks so much for joining me across these series, and I'll speak to you soon.
No worries. And the regional qualifiers as well, right? Because you've got SMG, the team with Mid1 and KP, and Motivate Trust. They're going to be joining in as well.
Yes, exactly. So some big teams there as well. Mushi's team, Mid1's team. It was Mushi's team.
It was Mushi's team. Not anymore.
Very exciting to have there. But yes, we'll leave it there then. Thanks so much. Huge thanks to Danog for taking us through Southeast Asia. Always much appreciated. Danog is covering the BTS Southeast Asian series at the moment. Fantastic analyst, and you should check out his Twitter, which is @Danog. We, however, are going to be moving on straight away to South America, where 1437 is going to be taking us through proceedings there. Okay, so just to kick off, I guess talk me through the highlights of this last week. I imagine it's going to be those No Ping versus Beast Coast series, but see if you've got anything different.
That was pretty much the big one. No Ping, they played in the best of 3 against Beast Coast. There was 2 potential series depending on who won, and the first series depended if No Ping won against Beast Coast, and Beast Coast would have to play a tiebreaker against Thunder Predator, and there was a lot of like stuff that happened during that series. A lot of emotions were high. Game 1, we saw HFN. He kind of quit really early into the game instead of playing it out. Game 2, it was a really big game for No Ping. They pretty much stomped Beast Coast. It didn't even look like Beast Coast had any chance. They just cut them out from the early game. Beast Coast, they tried to play their regular game. It just didn't work out. Then Game 3, that was the big one where we had a player, Pandaboo. He apparently had some anxiety attack. Later we found out, but in the game, what it looked like was they just lost 2 fights. They didn't get the Roshan for their Templar Assassin, and it was such a big thing because with the lineup that they played, they needed Aegis and they needed to keep progressing from that. And he just straight up quit on the game when they were pretty much leading for 95% of the game. And the last few minutes was when Beast Coast was starting to come back into it. And Thunder Predator didn't really like that what happened, because if they felt like Noping didn't give themselves a chance to play that game out, see something would have happened to win, so maybe Thunder Predator could have had that force that tiebreaker against Beast Coast. So they were really upset. Noping, they knew that if they lost the series, they would just have to play one more tiebreaker against Beast Coast in a best of 3 to see who would get that first seed. And that's what happened in the first series there.
So talk me through that final series then. The first series we can see is a little bit of odd things happening from Noping, the panic attack from Panda Boo, and the HFN give up on the first one. That second series was pretty convincing. They seemed like a very good team.
Oh, definitely. Noping in the second series absolutely destroyed Beast Coast. Beast Coast, they had like this Magnus Void Draft that they like to run or they thought was really good. I thought it was doing well, but then Noping with their constant aggression and Beast Coast with the lack of damage inside of Chrono, they couldn't really get it done in game 1. And that kind of set the tone for game 2. I feel like Beast Coast, they kind of outdrafted themselves at some point. They just couldn't have the lineup that they wanted. They felt like, okay, we took a really passive approach in game 1. Let's take a more aggressive approach in game 2 to try and win. But Noping, they had this huge Naga counter pick that just kind of destroyed the game, where if Beast Coast weren't leading through all 3 lanes and constantly pressuring them, Noping would just eventually outcarry them. And that's what happened in that game 2 as well. And Noping just looked so good in that series. So very big mental reset coming right after that first game series that they lost against Beast Coast.
Certainly. Do you think that Noping are definitively a stronger team than Beast Coast? Because these Beast Coast drafts, to me, they don't look incredible. It feels like perhaps they weren't necessarily strategically on the top of the game. I mean, picking Void 4 games in a row shows a certain lack of flexibility.
Right. I think Noping against Beast Coast on that day were definitely better. Even in the game when Beast Coast, or the series that Beast Coast won, like their early game was really shaky and Noping were dominating them. They just made a few too many mistakes. But I do believe if we're going to compare them to like on the international stage, I would still bet on Beast Coast over Noping if it was up to me.
Certainly. Okay, good to hear. Let's close up then. There's not much to talk about in South America with this week, by talking about the remainder of the series. And what happened, I suppose, with the relegation of Team Unknown of SG Esports pulling out a last-minute victory. Is there much to talk about there?
It was a very tight series. SG, there's a lot riding on them, especially since the time they kicked King RD, and that's the decision that they made. So the fans would have gone crazy if SG would have been relegated. Team Unknown, I think they had a shot in game number 3, but they just made a few too many mistakes. And unfortunately, it was just like that one game, ride or die, and SG just pulled out ahead. So hopefully next season, we're going to see a little bit more from SG, possibly even some roster changes. I feel like Tabo is just not working out for this team, to be honest, and it just doesn't feel like he's the best suitable option for them.
Great, that sounds good to me. I want to close up then by talking a little bit about what we can expect to see from Noping Esports and Beast Coast at the major, because these are 2 teams that no one will have seen at a major in quite some time. Beast Coast not attending the last major and Noping not qualifying for it. Is there a couple of sentences preview you can do for both of these teams?
Yeah, Noping, let's start with them because they are the new team. I think only HFN has any international LAN experience whatsoever, so he's going to have to help this team out quite a bit. And understanding that they have some emotional things that Noping are dealing with going on to that international stage, especially going straight into that playoffs. Like, they're going to be playing against some big dogs there. Hopefully, they can keep their chill because these tournaments, these majors, internationals, there's a lot of emotion riding on those tournaments. So I'm not really too hopeful for Noping. Truth be told, I feel like a lot of the other international teams, they're going to be a pretty good matchup against them because they know how to play that late game better. Whereas in SA, the late game teams here are not that good. They're more on that early game, that mid game, and if they dominate, then they win. If they don't, then things get really shaky later on. Where Noping, they like to play throughout the whole game and have that late game secured. So I feel like the international teams who play a little bit slower are going to be a pretty good matchup for them.
It's a big ask as well to jump straight into the playoffs and not have any.
Yeah,
lead in.
exactly.
Normally, a new team, you'd expect them to have a group stage at least to kind of find their feet. This is very much straight into the fire.
Yeah, and they're going to need to get like top 6 pretty much for them to be directly invited to TI. So win one series, that's what they really need for Noping. So if they can do that, then that's going to be huge for them. One series, that's it, like for their TI opportunity there, or they're just going to have to come back and play in the qualifiers. So Beast Coast, the other team, these guys have a lot of international analysts, especially at TI. I think their play style is going to be beautiful on the international stage. I have very high expectations for this team. This is a team that gets themselves hyped up for these big games. Plus, they're going to play on land with no ping issues. So I have very high expectations for them. They too will want to get a little bit more points to secure themselves, and I think they're going to be able to do it. I think Beast Coast is going to outperform No Ping at this major.
Great. Good to see them play on land with no ping issues as opposed to in the DPC with no ping issues. As a pun. Anyway, thanks so much for that. That's really helpful. Are there any closing thoughts you'd like to give about this season of the South American DPC?
I think Thunderpetter not going to the major, that was a big hit for them, and it surprised everybody as well. No Ping, they got first place. It's not even they got second or something, but they were the best team here in this DPC season. Almost a flawless ending for their run here. So I'm really looking forward to which of these teams will be going to TI, and I feel like there's potential for 3 South American teams to be at TI. So at least one of them are going to do well. And as for the major, I'm just happy to be able to see Beast Coast play, hopefully, assuming they all get all their players there.
Great. Much to look forward to then. Thanks so much for joining me across this season, and I'll speak to you soon. Huge thanks to 1437 for taking us through South America. Of course, 1437 can be followed on Twitter at 1437x. He's also next season going to be in Division 1, hopefully, if he ends up playing. I think he is going to. I've got a sneaking feeling he will. And can be watched there. So very, very exciting. Lots going on with him. We're going to be moving on straight away to our last region, though, which is North America, where Neff is going to be taking us through proceedings there. Okay, so I guess just to kick off, there's one big series this week from the North American DPC, the closing off decider of the winner, which was the Quincy Crew Undying series. Talk to me about what ended up happening there.
Well, Quincy Crew, absolute dominators. They managed to beat Evil Geniuses last week 2-1, which I think surprised everybody. They weren't surprised when they managed to beat Undying. What was surprising was Undying managing to take a single game off. I think a lot of what Undying does is based around Bryle popping off in the mid lane. If he isn't able to do that, then a team of Quincy Crew's caliber, they aren't really able to win. Game number 1, Quinn had a very dominating Viper performance. He struggled to get anywhere close to the lane on Bryle, unfortunately. In a bit of a drafting error, I think myself and a lot of the people on panel, Jenkins and Suns fan, definitely thought so. They last picked Doom on Undying, which wasn't really the solution to that game, and I think a lot of people thought that was why they lost. In game number 2, he popped off, managed to have a solo kill in the mid lane against Quinn, which surprised everybody and brought it to a game number 3, but Quincy Crew, they just proved to be a better team. I mean, they had tons of backline killers. They were playing against an Oracle, and showed why they deserve to be the top spot in NA, and I think they basically guaranteed themselves a spot in the International.
Well, very, very close there, about 0.1% off attending the International.
Oh, come on.
Close to...
Yeah.
Let's talk about that game too then, because I often think when a dominant team goes 2-1 to a less dominant team, it's always interesting to talk about the game they lost more. You mentioned it was a bit of a quick start from Undying that went into something. Was there any kind of exciting moments from Undying that shine through?
There were some good black holes, but I think they just played slow, steady Dota. They didn't give Quincy Crew a chance to finish the items they needed. Luna feels really strong in this patch. It's like how Alchemist used to feel, and they took advantage of that on Undying. They managed to get a butterfly on Tomato, but before they could actually close out MKB, which you're forced to build against it now, you can't just go Divine Rapier and YOLO Omni / the hero with True Strike like you used to be able to. it's a bit more difficult to play against it now. So they hit all their timings very well. Bryle popped off in the mid lane, managed to get those solo kills off to Quinn. And, despite the fact they almost brooded them on Quincy Crew, a lot of early aggression from the Broodmother, they ultimately ended up losing that game. And I think a lot of it was due to Bryle's dominating performance on the Storm Spirit.
I would like to talk a little bit more about Quincy Crew. Obviously, last season they came second to EG. This season they've improved on that. But obviously it's an improvement that's kind of it's like a coin flip in a way, because they both were very high win teams last season as well, and they have been this season. Do you think Quincy Crew have improved? Has their LAN experience made them a better team, or have you noticed any differences across the season for them?
I think they're a little bit stronger than they were last season, but I think some of it might come down to the fact that Quincy Crew has EG somewhat figured out. When you have to play against a really strong team, you give up a lot of data with your map movements, with your overall game plan. And we talked about that in, I think, week number 4. You missed me in week 5, that EG had to play against Undying on May the 13th, and then Quincy Crew after that on May the 16th. So that did give Quincy Crew somewhat of an advantage there. They had more time to prep. They had more time to pick them apart because they had to play against strong opponents on EG. And I think that might have given them the edge in that pretty close series between the two of them.
Fair enough. Let's move in then to talk about the other series this week. The third one was, of course, a forfeit from Black and Yellow, who lost this other series against Four Zoomers 2-1. Four Zoomers, again, they haven't managed to qualify. That I think they're probably a little bit behind Undying. Are there any... Because what we're now talking about is Quincy Crew and EG are both definitely qualified for the international pretty much. Therefore, Undying are the favourites to therefore qualify for the international from the open qualifiers. Did you see anything from Four Zoomers that suggests they could give them a run for their money?
Well, there was BTS Pro Series 5, which Four Zoomers ultimately ended up beating Undying in the grand finals for. So if that, anything shows that they are capable of taking games off, it'll be that one. Because that's no small prize pool. I'm sure they're playing their heart outs there on Undying. I think the difference is like $10,000 or something like that they would have had in their pockets if they managed to beat Four Zoomers there. The international qualifiers, everybody's going to bring out absolutely everything, but obviously you want to be able to qualify for the major and slot yourself into TI through DPC points if you're able. There's a couple people on Twitter who are saying that would be better. You'd be better off on Undying to just end up losing to Quincy Crew. I'm not sure that's the case. I think Undying still have pretty strong rivals in the form of Four Zoomers. I'd give them maybe 70-30 odds beating them in the qualifiers for the international.
Talk to me about what Four Zoomers were doing well in that series. Obviously, Black and Yellow, somewhat the end of an implosion there.
Yeah.
Was it just
my heart, this NA drama. Sorry, continue.
Is it just they beat an imploding team, like barely beat an imploding team 2-1, or is there more to say for the team?
I think Black and Yellow had moments of brilliance that game. Or that series. Game number 1, Four Zoomers, they tried to take these fights up on the high ground. They tried to take these Roche fights, and Black and Yellow managed to close it out. It's difficult to push high ground to a Faceless Void and Ancient Apparition, and I think Zero played incredibly well on his Timbersaw as well that game. Game numbers 2 and 3 is a bit more one-sided, and I do think that Four Zoomers is significantly stronger, but Black and Yellow, it's like you said, they've got a bunch of really good players, but they were imploding all season. They managed to take a game off of Undying where they underestimated them in week number 3. So they have this ability, right? These are some really good guys, but I feel like their hearts aren't all there, as you may have seen through the Zero and Envy blow up on Twitter. It's been a rough week to be an NA fan.
Yeah, a little bit. It's always a rough week to be an NA fan. Except in the major. There's brief moments, but other than that. You take it very seriously there. I want to talk about Division 2 as well here. The Division 2 was won by Division 2 Hustlers, of course, with friend and contributor to the podcast 1437 now suggesting to me that I think he will play in Division 1 next season. Possibly. Looking forward to that. I mean, his tone has changed, I would say.
He's taking it a bit more seriously now.
Yeah, I think when you qualify, you begin to go, maybe. We'll see. And then Arkosh qualifying for the upper division. Were they, for you, the front-running teams?
Arkosh, they were not the front-running teams. In fact, I had a bet with a couple people that I would eat Bulba's hat if they ended up making it into Division 1.
Have you eaten Bulba's hat?
No, but I did contact EG's manager. First, he tried to extort me to see how much money I would pay for it. And then he later confirmed that the hat has never been washed. So once he gets back to Vancouver, which he may eventually, not looking forward to having to eat that one. But for anyone watching who's been following that story, I am on top of it. So I'm not going to chicken out.
I think
They
Bogle
ended
would
up
be up for you eating his hat.
maybe. I mean, that thing's got to be like a NA Dota relic, right? I think if
Yeah.
I eat that, like in a couple of years from now, it's going to be worth a lot of money.
Yeah. You get it, yes, that's true.
Yeah, if he ever retires, he just sell his hat or something. I don't know. Anyways, about the teams. Wind and Rain, they ended up losing to Felt, but ultimately disqualified along with Picado Squad Gaming. I think that one is still undergoing investigation as far as match fixing allegations between the two of them. For now, both teams are currently banned. I hate to see this kind of stuff happen in my home region, but hopefully more details about that one will come to light soon. As far as the games go, Dogchamp losing to D2 Hustlers is unfortunate. I know B9 was talking a lot of smack in the post-game interview, saying that they were two-dimensional and weak, and it looks like it was the other way around, because I know who was it? I think it was Devi Lama talking smack back to him, but like, they call us two-dimensional. Oh boy, Yaren even tried pulling out a Techies in game number 2, which he's seen a lot of success with this season on Dogchamp, but ultimately that one wasn't enough to bring down Hustlers either, and they ended the season on 14-1.
Wow.
Pretty good.
Very impressive, and I think they could do reasonably in the upper division, although we'll never quite know until next season. Have you got any final thoughts about the North American DPC?
I think this sort of thing was really helpful to growing the scene back up to where it used to be. North America doesn't get that many tournaments. We've got Summit as our main and only tournament organizer, I feel. Because of that, a lot of people step away from Dota. So I'd like to give a shout out to Valve for hosting the DPC and making this possible and bringing a lot of people back to the game and bringing the viewership back. It does mean a lot, as much as I rag on them for various stuff. I'm happy to see it.
Yeah, shout out to Valve. Okay, we'll leave it there then. Thanks so much for joining me across this season, and I'll speak to you soon. Huge thanks, as always, to Neff for taking us through proceedings in North America. He can be followed on Twitter at NeffSensei. As promised, I'm going to give you a little bit of a China run-through. China, of course, ended up with Team Asta topping the groups, but that was very much confirmed when they beat Elephant 2-1 in a series that I've pretty much quite enjoyed watching. A lot of Puck, a lot of Mars. Team Elephant perhaps showing their continual mid-game weakness, and Asta slightly more focused, a kind of a clearer strategy and draft, I would say, that ended up pushing them to a victory. The highlight of the week was probably, though, Vici versus PSG LGD in the tiebreak of the second to third, which puts PSG LGD into the group stage and Vici into the wild card. PSG LGD ended up taking that 2-1. I thought it was a very impressive performance from them. Faceless Void in game 2 and Ursa in game 3. Quick games, lots of aggressive, exciting play, but lots to look forward to for China in the major. I think Asta, which Kips has been saying the whole time, now they've got Baboka or Boraxa, as he is now known, available, will go from strength to strength and stand a very good chance of taking very high placing in the major if my overwhelming prediction of Beast Coast winning don't come true. We'll see, though. Lots to look forward to. Thanks so much for checking out this series. Again, if you want to follow me on Twitter, I can be found at Daniel Offen. And if you'd like to financially support me for creating this show, you can find a link to my Patreon in the episode description. I'm going to leave you, though, so thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you soon.